What a beautiful pond. Thanks so much for sharing your garden with us. And now we're joined by one of our favorite guests here on Central Texas Gardener, Susan Wittig. Albert, always a pleasure to have you join us here.
Thank you, Tom. So good to see you.
You are such a busy and prolific writer, and our topic today is one that blends beautifully with the narrative of your most recent book, which is Morning Gloria. And for those who don't know your work, why don't you describe real briefly your heroine and the kind of the series of books you've written with these botanical themes?
Well, this is number 19 in a series of books about an herbalist, China Bales, who lives here in Central Texas in a little town called Pecan Springs, halfway between Austin and San Antonio. And all of her mysteries involve plants in one way or another, all the way from Time of Death, which was the first book, that's T-H-Y-M-E, of course,
right.
to Morning Gloria. And in this book, China gets involved with the dark side of herbs, psychoactive herbs, and actually the street trade. You know, we like to think about herbs as those warm and fuzzy things that we can use, to our culinary plants and plants that make us feel good. Well, plants make us feel all kinds of ways, and that's one of the themes of this book.
Okay, so more China Bales gets involved in the drug trafficking situation.
Somebody actually tells her how to turn Morning Glory seeds into good stuff.
Well,
right.
Somebody's definition of good stuff, but there are so many different plants that we use in our gardens and actually consume daily.
Actually consume daily, yes.
Right. I'm sipping coffee here between our words, so obviously that's one plant that we could talk about.
Well, coffee is ubiquitous in our culture. Most of us couldn't get through the day with 120,000 tons of caffeine a year. We drink in coffee. There's a wonderful legend about it. It's said that a Yemeni shepherd saw his goats jumping up and down and being very frisky after they ate the berries off a plant. He took it to a local monk who brewed it up, drank it, and it kept him awake all night while he was trying to meditate. And so the next thing you know, it was Starbucks.
2,000 years later, here we are.
Exactly, here we are.
All prancing goats.
Yes, that's right. And on the other side, there's tea. If we don't like caffeine in our coffee, there is tea, which we don't grow here in the United States. We do grow a caffeine-related plant, though, and that's Yupon holly. I'm sure
this is one I want to spend a little time talking about because of, again, for the stimulant plants, where everybody thinks about coffee. But we were visiting just a short while ago, and you were telling me that during World War II, when coffee was rationed, the government got into the Yupon business.
Yes, they tried in South Carolina. Actually, it began in the Depression because it was so well known that Yupon was a strong source of caffeine. In fact, the early anthropologists who had observed Indian tribes drinking this stuff, and the name for Yupon holly is Ilex vomitoria, which was yes, that's right. It was an observational term because the men, only the men would do this, they would drink huge quantities of this caffeine-heavy brew and then vomit it back. It was used as a purgative, but it was also used as a way to energize themselves, So the government said, during the Depression, let's try growing this, and then during the Second World War, we've got a good thing going, but then the war was over. And the idea of vomitoria still clung in many people's minds. So.
Right. Yeah, it's a fairly strong descriptor.
Right, but it doesn't taste bad. It does not make you vomit. It does not induce vomiting, and it's really easy to make. You just go out.
And you've made the Yupon tea yourself.
Yes, I have. And many people have drunk yerba buena, which is the South American version of it.
Okay.
It's a related plant. And it's big in South America.
Okay, yerba buena, you see it sold all the time in local stores. So,
So, but all you have to do is take these fresh leaves and parch them. I use a cast iron skillet and dry them, and then you can brew it up as a caffeine drink.
Well, there you go. And so you put a little lemon and honey in your Yupon tea?
No, I just dash mine up the way I always do. But when the end of the world as we know it arrives, we don't have to go without our caffeine because we have the secret.
Okay, very good. Well, a couple of other things that are stimulants. I think of chilies as being stimulants to my palate, not to my nervous system, but they actually act that way.
Yes, they do. They create an endorphin response that's a great pleasure. And in some ways, that acts like tobacco, which is both a stimulant and a sedative. So peppers will stimulate us, energize us. Yes, it's that pleasure-pain principle.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
right. Well, as somebody who eats Thai food frequently, there are a few times where I've walked out of the restaurant feeling a little lightheaded. Maybe this is the result.
Yes,
Yeah.
And there is another feeling, it's called chili hand. If you peel your chili peppers indiscriminately, you can actually, your hands can actually feel that for hours and hours and hours, that tingling, that pain.
Right.
And there is a strong release of endorphins with that too.
And of course, cocoa is renowned throughout the world as a stimulant.
Yes, and in fact as an aphrodisiac as well. And in fact, when coffee came to Europe, it was at first said, be careful about that stuff. Don't drink that. That's an aphrodisiac. Well, of course, that led to more coffee drinking.
Of course.
But cocoa, the same way.
Right.
The chocolate beans were brewed up and were actually sold as an aphrodisiac. It has theobromine in it as well as caffeine, and it is a pretty strong pepper upper. The Aztecs brewed it up with chili peppers.
Yeah. And it was a drink that was ritualistically drunk.
A drink of the gods.
Yes, well, chocolate. Yeah, I can understand that.
I like to tell people chocolate is an herb too.
Right. Well, there you go.
Just watch it. Be careful because it's all some of it's pretty calorie dense. We won't talk about that.
No, we won't. Now, on the other side of the equation, we've talked about stimulants. There are a whole array of plants that have what you say is a soporific effect. And that really means to just slows us down.
Slows us down, and then there are plants that literally put us to sleep. The plants that can slow us down are lavender, which is wonderful. A little bit of lavender scented oil on your pillow, on a Kleenex in the pillowcase, or just on the light bulb in the room. Literally slows down brain waves, and scientists have demonstrated that over and over. Another plant that grows in your garden, I'll bet, is dill. That's another slowing down plant. The word dill comes from the Norwegian word for lull, meaning to put to sleep. Isn't that lovely? And
nice. And getting back to the lavender thing, I've actually heard that in some countries in the world that they will pump lavender scent into prisons.
Oh, really? I
Yes.
hadn't heard that one. That's interesting. Well, there was an experiment with rosemary, which is a picker-upper in our last category we were talking about. They used it at the University of Chicago in an experiment for kids who are undergoing testing, that is, taking tests.
Right.
And the kids who got the rosemary got picked up, got more alert, were more awake, did better on the tests.
Well, I mean, they're all, it's
We
all
just
sorts
don't.
of fun
We
stuff
just
here.
are not aware as humans. We treat these things as products, not as processes in ourselves. That's one of the things I always want to do with the China Bales books, is to bring us back to the plant base that we live in. It's really important. Important for me, anyway.
Right. Sometimes these act on us. Sometimes they act on the creatures we share our lives with, which leads us to catnip.
Ah, yes.
And I think about this because catnip is part of my arsenal for controlling my herd. I use it.
Cats,
I use it as a right. I use it as a bribe, and also as a way to wear them out when they're wearing me out.
Well, catnip is a really interesting plant because it has a soporific effect on us. Before tea came to England as the national drink from the Orient, everybody grew catnip in their gardens, and that was the tea of choice. And it was it was not an energizing tea. They were used to drinking it before they went to bed. It was often given to children to quiet their colic. But on felines, at least on those felines that have this genetic proclivity, your cats must all share the same gene.
Apparently they do.
Cats who have that gene really go crazy over catnip.
Yeah, well,
It's a euphoric for them.
And if they've driven me crazy and they're keeping me up at night, I'd give them a little bit of that before I go to bed. They wear themselves out, and all is well with the world.
Yeah, isn't that wonderful? The major narcotic plant, the plant that does put people literally to sleep, we're not permitted to grow. The government told us in 1942 that we can't grow opium poppies in this country. Control, the Opium Poppy Control Act, 1942. And that plant has been of just enormous benefit to humans. Back as far as Egyptian times, doctors were putting people to sleep so they could set breaks, could perform surgery. Of course, now we have learned how to abuse that plant, and that's a very sad thing.
Right. Very dangerous thing for many people.
Very dangerous thing. By the way, you can have poppy seeds. You just can't plant them. I mean, how could we have poppy seed rolls if we didn't have poppy seeds?
Well, they're fine on the muffins or the rolls or on your bagels.
That's as far as we'll go with that one.
Okay, very good. Now, there, in addition to, it was stimulants and we had soporifics, but there are also hallucinogenic or euphoriant plants. And there are a lot of those that we're used to dealing with as well that we don't think of in that way sometimes. The morning glory, which is related to the title of your book, Morning Gloria, is one. And it's not all the different species of morning glory that have this quality.
No, it's a particular species that we know as the Christmas vine. It has a white blossom. They made it blue on the color of the book, but that's just fine. It connects it with a plant that grows in our garden. But this particular Christmas tree vine was used by the Maztecs, by the shamans. And their word for the seeds, that was the part of the plant that they used, was ololiaqui, little round things, little round things. And they used that in their divining, in their ritual processes. It was really very important to them.
Well, and people who've grown up in the past few decades have heard many stories about the use of hallucinogenic plants in the Native Americans of the Southwest, like the peyote and things like that are fairly commonly known. But I think it probably surprised a lot of people that there are things that might be growing in the garden that have that same quality. There's one, a member of the salvia family that fits into this, which surprised me when I first heard this.
Yes, and that's gotten quite a lot of attention in the media, although the media doesn't sometimes get things right. But salvia Salvia divinorum is a plant that has been used again in Mexico and points south as a divining plant that helps shamans look into the future. There were for a while, and the Texas legislature considered outlawing it, but it would be pretty hard to outlaw that plant. It looks like all the other salvias.
Well, we only have a few seconds left, Susan, so real briefly, tell us what your next big writing project is.
Oh, I'm working on a series called The Darling Dahlias. This is a garden club, and the books are set in southern Alabama. That's Darling, Alabama, in the 1930s. So it's a book about the Depression.
Okay, well, I know that people will love that as they've loved your whole China Bales series. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for coming on, sharing your expertise, your love of the garden, and your quick wit with us. We really enjoy when you come.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
And coming up next, it's our friend Daphne.